Geographically isolated from the rest of mainland USA, Alaska straddles the Arctic Circle and divides the Pacific and Arctic Oceans. Covering 570,000 square miles, twice the area of Texas, it is 1/5 the size of the entire lower 48 states and 6 times larger than the United Kingdom. Only 635,000 people live in Alaska, little more than 1 person for each square mile. Amazingly, if Manhattan Island were populated at the same density, only 16 people would be living there. Alaska is proudly different from the rest of the USA. Of its great land area, less than 1/20th of 1% is developed. Most of the rest remains untouched. In many ways, it still resembles the American West of the late 19th century. Very few areas are accessible by surfaced roads. Most of the state can only be reached by air and by sea. The unpredictability of the weather and the less than reliable Alaska Marine Highway, the state ferry system, ensure that travel presents quite a challenge. Alaska has 17 of the 20 highest mountains in North America, including the highest, Mount McKinley, at 20,320 feet. It has almost as much coastline as the rest of the US put together, and more active glaciers than exist in the whole of the rest of the inhabited world. Put simply, Alaska is immense, in many ways overwhelming. Perhaps its greatest appeal is the unparalleled opportunity it offers for getting away from civilization and experiencing wilderness and wildlife in its natural state. The Stikine River flows 360 miles from the mountains of British Columbia to enter the sea at a broad shallow delta just north of Wrangell.
So how many hours difference is that?
The delta is a prime wildlife viewing area, weather permitting. We appear to have picked a bad day. Instead, let's have a James Bond style jet boat ride through the lower reaches of the river. Jet boats are used here to handle the very fast currents. As we progress upriver, the temperature drops noticeably, and the reason soon becomes apparent. These are our first icebergs, and they are pretty impressive. The blue colour arises because glacial ice absorbs all the colours of the spectrum except blue, which is reflected. The effect is most apparent on an overcast day. Occasional glimpses through the mist and rain give an idea of the awesome scenery we are missing. Now we see the source of the icebergs, Shakes Glacier, named after the Tlingit tribal dynasty. Several generations of chief of this name ruled the tribe over many years and were very influential in the early settlement of the southeast region. Inevitably, and to our guide's horror, Steve can't resist a ride on an iceberg.
It's floating, isn't it?
Yes, it's floating. It's drifting away. Hopefully it's fairly stable. Shall we go get him?
No.
No, should we just leave him there?
Leave it there.
When you crash into it, it'll probably knock him off.
Yeah, hold on.
It'll be cold.
You gotta go where we were on that side. He'll never be able to get down this side. Get ready for reverse here.
A short break to enjoy the scenery in the pouring rain gives an opportunity to contemplate the magnificence of this important river. Glacier fed, it is one of the fastest flowing navigable rivers in the state. In the early gold rush days, it was an important route through the coast mountain range. And how about a dip in the Chief Shakes hot springs to round off the day?
I don't think that's going to defrost anytime soon.
Yeah, and you can do it if you go down the north arm.
The Rough Guide to Alaska rates the White Pass and Yukon Railway as number 1 in its list of the top 25 things to see and do. This 3-foot wide narrow gauge railway rises from sea level in Skagway to White Pass at an elevation of 2,865 feet in just 20 rugged miles. Plagued again by the weather, our planned scenic overflight of Glacier Bay en route to Skagway resolves into a very atmospheric flight over some dramatic coast mountain scenery. A bird's eye view of a sled dog camp where the dogs spend the summer high on the Mendenhall Glacier. Overflying these huge glaciers gives an excellent view of the different glacial features, notably the lateral and median moraines, which create such striking patterns. The moraines are made up of rocks and other material carried along by the glacier. Crevasses at the points where the ice flows faster can also be seen clearly. This elevated view of Skagway shows how the early settlers had to find whatever small flat areas they could to develop their communities. Skagway, an early gold rush town and now a very popular port of call for the cruise ships, is one of the more attractive towns in Alaska. And now for the railway. Started in 1898, the entire length of the railway from Skagway to Whitehorse was completed in just 26 months to provide easier access to and from the Klondike goldfields. It is a marvel of engineering. In the first few miles, the railway runs alongside the wild Skagway River and gives fine views of the mountainous road leading into Skagway, one of the very few southeast Alaskan towns accessible by road.
The most violent section of the Skagway River. Now this is known as the Whirlpool section, and its length is a class 6 rapid, meaning it has never successfully been navigated.
As the train climbs higher, we get a view of the Trestle Bridge, which we must cross to reach White Pass. Fortunately, we do not have to cross this one. Crossing the Canadian border, we meet a train returning from Whitehorse, and we are soon then on our return trip to Skagway. This is Dead Horse Gulch, where one of the old miners' tracks can still be seen. Imagine lines of miners with pack horses passing both ways alongside this narrow, precipitous track in harsh winter conditions, and it becomes clear how it got its name. We have much to ponder as we complete our spectacular journey. The ATV trip is really a boys' day out, which Liz enters into with as much enthusiasm as she can muster, secretly no doubt enjoying it as much as the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Boots were best idea, I think.
This is mine.
They're not working.
The glacier hike, on the other hand, is a fascinating experience for all of us.
Just know that your crampons are going to hold your feet. They're going to hold you on the ice, so you can walk straight down a hill.
Glaciers, rivers of ice, are formed from frozen compacted snow which gathers on the ice fields high in the mountains and which then flow downhill, eventually giving birth to rivers or carving into the sea or into lakes which have been created by the glacier's terminal moraine.
You see this creek right here. It's a little bit bigger. Queen Anne.
Amazingly, the ice we are walking on is around 200 to 300 years old and is many hundreds of feet thick.
Okay, sounds good.
To reach Columbia Bay from our base in Valdez, we passed through Valdez Narrows, where, in March 1989, the Exxon Valdez spilled 11 million gallons of oil into Prince William Sound. Fortunately today, there is little visual evidence remaining of this ecological disaster, and wildlife appears to be thriving. Entering Columbia Bay, we immediately see the signs of the previous day's heavy carving. High temperatures have resulted in a huge section of the face of Columbia Glacier breaking away, causing these extensive ice flows in the bay.
Pretty nice for mayonnaise. Here's the mayonnaise.
The views as we prepare to launch our kayaks are simply stunning, and we are soon underway for an experience that is to prove truly memorable. The colours and shapes of the icebergs and the peace and tranquility are almost indescribable. Optimistically, we give chase to a juvenile bald eagle, but he can fly and we can't, so pictures are few and far between. Without doubt, this experience gives a whole new meaning to the word amazing. As with many southeast communities, the city of Juneau, Alaska's state capital, is built on a narrow area of land between the Gastineau Channel and the encroaching coast mountains. Only half the size of Loughborough, Juneau caters mainly for the thousands of cruise ship passengers who descend on the city every summer. Indeed, a high-level view of downtown shows just how far the cruise ships dominate the townscape, physically as well as economically. This is Auk Bay, 15 miles north of downtown. The ferries dock here, and the airport is located just 2 miles to the south. The extensive activity in the harbour at Auk Bay shows Juneau's dependence on the sea. Juneau has a number of impressive tourist attractions, not least the well-known Mendenhall Glacier. Located just a few miles north of downtown, this impressive glacier can be reached by road. The new visitor centre, with its extensive displays of glacier formation and activity, is well worth a visit. The Mount Roberts tramway offers fine views over Juneau and up and down the Gastineau Channel. It also gives access to the Alpine Loop Trail, where these Tlingit tree carvings mark the way through the forest. And to the Juneau Raptor Centre, where injured birds are cared for prior to being returned to the wild. We have great expectations of our boat trip on Prince William Sound, but as we leave Whittier behind, we do not fully appreciate how memorable this day is to be. By the end of the day, our impression of the Sound as one of the most beautiful places we have ever visited is to be well and truly sealed. In the Barry arm of College Fjord, we have an up-close and personal view of the Cascade, Barry and Cox glaciers. Whilst Barry and Cox are retreating, Cascade Glacier, surprisingly, is still advancing. Some hope remains in the face of the threats posed by global warming. The ice floes provide excellent haul-outs for the harbour seals who love to bask in the summer sunshine. This is Jerry Sanger, marine biologist and our guide for the day. I guess Jerry doesn't want to be in the shot. Our comfort breaks are full of photographic opportunities, and as we carry on eastwards across the Sound, the scenery becomes ever more spectacular. We pass a mobile salmon canning plant, cashing in on the heavy salmon runs at this time in the season. A couple of inquisitive harbour seals lead us on to a large colony of sea lions. Always good entertainment value. The Lulu Belle out of Valdez is also attracted by the sea lion colony. In the middle of the Sound, we meet a colony of crested puffins. And finally a kittiwake colony of around 9,000 birds on the cliffs near to Whittier. What an amazing day this has been. Our first wildlife venture is to look for whales. From past experience, this involves much looking and much patience. Eventually, patience is rewarded and humpback whales are spotted in a feeding routine. Humpback whales measure up to 40 feet long and weigh up to 40 tons. The name is derived from their distinctive arching dive pattern. They migrate from Hawaii and Mexico in the spring to the rich feeding grounds in southeast Alaska. They are sophisticated feeders, often hunting in groups of 10 or more in a process of cooperative feeding. They swim through clouds of sea life, shrimp, herring and krill, scooping up 500 gallons of water in one gulp. Now on the endangered list, they were hunted to near extinction before the International Whaling Commission gave them worldwide protection in 1966. Numbers are increasing, but they still amount to only 30 to 35% of their original population. We watch these creatures for some time before being rewarded with a double tail shot. Awesome. We managed to track down our next objective on a dedicated farm near Palmer on the Glen Highway. Muskoxen are gentle beasts with personality, we are told, and they are very well equipped for a life close to the Arctic Circle. And then it's back to the kayaks to look for sea otters around Yukon Island in Kachimak Bay. Here, in stunning scenery, we hope to get close to the creatures we usually only see from a distance. Now for our first opportunity. This chap is well aware of our presence, but seems quite relaxed about it. Preening or feeding? I'm not sure which. Sea otters regularly feed on their backs like this, eating up to 25% of their body weight daily. They sometimes carry a stone on their chest to use for breaking open shellfish. There's another little guy over by the shore. He appears to be waking up from a nap and again seems unconcerned by our presence.
Close enough.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, it's magnificent. Sea otters are members of the weasel family, but can there be any doubt that Paddington Bear, whilst he might have come from darkest Peru, was really modelled on a sea otter? And the elusive moose? Sure to see one of those in Alaska, they said. and we do see them at a distance.
You getting things in focus? Yeah.
In the dark.
She's moving now,
Across the road.
moving up towards the road.
Well hidden amongst the trees. And finally by the roadside. But we really want to see a big guy with a huge rack of antlers close up. Okay, here we go. What more do you want? Well, some daylight would be nice. We can't get decent footage in the twilight at almost midnight. Finally, on our last night in Kincaid Park, not too far from downtown Anchorage, we get our chance. This youngster appears to have a problem with shedding his antlers. He also appears a little nervous, and it's best for us to keep our distance. But how about this guy? Not too old, but with an impressive rack of antlers, and relaxed enough for us to take a few pictures. He even stops the traffic for us. And, happy at last, we leave him chewing up the plants in the University Outdoors Centre. Mention Alaska and thoughts soon turned to bears. We had planned 2 major excursions to see them. This should have been one of the all-time highlights of our time in Alaska. A guaranteed chance to see brown bears in Katmai National Park. Unfortunately, the weather wouldn't cooperate and the flight was cancelled. But this is Alaska in August, and the salmon are running. Salmon means bears in numbers, and this is Annan Creek in southeast Alaska. So just sit back and enjoy the spectacle. 90% of summer visitors to Alaska don't get to see the mountain at all. Will we be lucky? Our first sight of the mountain from Talkeetna, 50 miles to the southeast, is unexpected. The summit appears from its cloud cover a little before a midnight sunset and gives us a very hazy view, just to whet our appetites. Tomorrow we are booked to overfly North America's highest mountain. We have chosen K2 as our preferred operator, and we are soon at the aircraft for our pre-flight briefing.
And also mounted on the fuselage is an emergency locator transmitter. If we're down in a bush somewhere, got a little switch on it, you flip it on to broadcast to the satellite and gives our position.
Known by the native Alaskans as Denali, the High One, the mountain was renamed Mount McKinley in 1896. In worldwide terms, the height of Mount McKinley, 20,320 feet, is not too impressive. There are many peaks in the Andes and the Himalayas that are much higher, but Mount McKinley, rising as it does from the surrounding tundra at little more than 1,800 feet, can boast the greatest vertical rise of any mountain anywhere. The mountain dominates the landscape for miles in all directions. Whilst not a technically difficult mountain to climb by most routes, McKinley is located only just outside the Arctic Circle, and a combination of thin atmosphere, extremely low temperatures and ferocious winds gusting up to 150 miles per hour make this mountain a supreme challenge. This is the famous Wickersham Wall, rising straight up almost 18,000 feet to the summit of the mountain. The great gorge of the Ruth Glacier, deeper than the Grand Canyon. The ice at this point is 4,000 feet thick. And as our pilot lines up the approach for our landing in the Sheldon Amphitheatre on the Ruth Glacier, it is time for us all to prepare for what is to be the most amazing experience of all.